Hello and a very warm welcome to the latest edition of the Current Bun, the place for all things current and not so current. With me today is a very special guest. I've got Duggy Johnstone, who's the president of the East Midlands Bakers Union. And we're going to be talking about something really important in today's politics with the revelations around McSweeney and Mandelson. There's a book by Paul Holden called
The Fraud.
And it explores the capitulation of Labour to the right and also some of the tactics and the lobbying used by the right of Labour and really how it changed from being a party that represented the mass of ordinary people in Britain to a party run by lobbyists and careerists. What do you think about that, Dougie, reading the book?
Listen, I think when we look at the book, you've got to look at the people behind it in this Labour Together. These are the people behind it. These are the people who brought Morgan McSweeney in. These are the people behind our Prime Minister, Kier Starmer. Kier Starmer, by the way, hasn't got any political nous on him whatsoever. He needs to be told. He's one of these lawyers. You know the old joke. You can hire a lawyer to tell you any viewpoint he wants. That's Starmer. They can put him in. What it is, if anybody watched the Labour files or the Ford report, what it does, it goes into increasing depths about what happened in Labour. Because basically this group within Labour, who control Labour now, they don't have the approval of anyone. They have nobody. Not in their party, not in their group, not amongst the trade unions. They are a small group that have just seized control of this for their own benefits, for their own careers, for their own devious tactics. They don't actually believe in anything. You can see it today. You know, you look at Labour today and you think, well, what does Labour stand for? What are their views? What are their opinions? Well, they don't stand for anything because they don't believe in anything. The only thing they believe in is power. That's the only thing they want is power. And they think in their own viewpoints, they wish to get hired for lobbying firms and everything. Because you can see now Starmer's in, the people who were behind Labour Together, lots of them are now getting hired by lobbying firms for access. They're getting paid thousands for it.
Yeah, we've seen that with a good example is Wes Streeting, who's often lined up to be the next leader after Starmer and the latest revelations of Mandelson makes it more and more likely that he's going to be thrown out anytime soon. But also, there was a huge vendetta run by the right against the project to try to make Labour a left-wing party again under Corbyn. Accusations of anti-Semitism, and which were echoed readily by the right-wing press in the UK. And the book also goes into how they buttered up relations with that. And instead of actually standing up for trade unionists and ordinary people, they've been bought out largely by private lobbyists, American healthcare firms trying to ruin the foundations of the NHS. What do you make of that?
The thing that surprises me is just how devious and nasty these people were. How much effort they spent in the anti-Semitism thing. It weren't just them. They were tied up with a campaign against anti-Semitism. Now, me and you and most people would say anti-Semitism. It's a very serious thing and it's good to fight against it. Except a lot of these people weren't even Jewish who were putting in complaints and getting people expelled from Labour, destroying their lives, who were actually Jewish activists. You were 5 times more likely to be expelled from Labour for anti-Semitism if you're Jewish. I mean, the worst case I can just offhand think of was the case of Rika Bird and Helen Marks, 2 elderly pensioners, Jewish pensioners, daughters of Holocaust survivors. And during the Panorama programme, this was all set up by Labour Together. There was a Jewish full-timer in Labour called Ben Westerman. Ben Westerman went on to say that he'd done an interview with two members, and what they had done is that during the interview, one member had turned round to him and said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "I'm not prepared to answer that." She says, "Are you from Israel?" Obviously an anti-Semitic trope. Nobody would have any qualms about that. The only trouble was that they'd been allowed to record the whole interview. These two elderly women. And what they actually said was, "What branch are you from?" Is that anti-Semitic? No, it's not. But they carried it on, and they've doubled down on that. They've even, the Canary has put out the full interview, and it shows you it. But Westerman and the others still double down on it. And against two elderly women, pensioners, it's absolutely disgusting.
Margaret Hodge was behind a lot of the complaints made at the time. And there was also the example, I can remember, of John Mann, who verbally accosted, you might say, Ken Livingstone, one of Corbyn's key supporters at the time, just surprising him, really, and trapping him with some difficult historical questions, which...
And you can see this when you see the John Mann piece.
Yeah.
Yeah? He goes in with a crowd of journalists, all following John Mann. Is that on the spur of the moment, or is that a setup? I think it was a setup.
No question in my mind, really. The whole Corbyn debacle, really, with the chicken coup as well, where the entire cabinet nearly resigned, just one after the other.
Labour Together were part of the chicken coup. After the chicken coup happened, and then Corbyn nearly won in 2017, it was decided then amongst Labour Together that there was no way that they could actually take over the party again in a fair fight, revealing who they were. Now this is another point about Labour Together, is how they broke the law. They didn't release, which they're supposed to, all their funding. Who is their funders? Sir Trevor Chin. Trevor Chin is a major backer of Israel. He supports Labour Friends of Israel, other organisations. Trevor Chin is up to his neck in it. He backs anything to destroy the left. They gave loads of money to Labour Together. They were told time and time again, you must reveal your funding. Morgan turned round and says, well, we're not a campaign group, so we don't have to. The Electoral Commission wrote back and says, it doesn't matter. You still have to reveal your funding. He kept that secret for over 2.5 years. He had another Labour Together person, Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. Shabana Mahmood has stood up in Labour Together meetings, and they're very hard to find. They only have about 1 or 2 meetings per year. She stood up and says, Labour Together, they always revealed their funding. She lied. They lied like anything.
It's not just that. I mean, Starmer himself lied about what he stood for.
Oh, yeah.
During the leadership contest in order to curry votes from the left. And as soon as he got in, he just reneged on every single promise that he made. And obviously, there's the lies now of the disclosure of the vetting around Peter Mandelson.
I mean, what actually makes me laugh about this whole Peter Mandelson thing, it just shows you what, if you just scratch the surface, how awful the British media are. The British media are absolutely awful. I knew about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein because I watched the Dispatch's programme, The Prince and the Paedophile, which had loads of evidence about Mandelson and his relationship with Epstein. Yet, the British journalists that are paid dwarfing salaries Emily Maitlis is one of them. They say, oh, well, we knew about Mandelson. If you knew, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you say anything?
I think The Independent also broke the story quite a few years ago as well. Yeah. It was well known, and really, there's either two possibilities. Either Starmer's completely ignorant of all this, or he willfully misled the British public.
I think Starmer, Labour insiders, people who work with Starmer, apparently Owen Jones has said that, listen, Starmer thinks he's in control. He's not. He's not. He's been driven around on a driverless train. He has no views or anything. He's one of these lawyers that you can say, right, here's your brief, you mouth it off. He has nothing about him.
One of my criticisms of the fraud is that it doesn't go into enough detail, I think, on what Corbyn should have done about it.
Yeah.
How could that be turned around? Because they had control of the Labour NEC at one point, the left. Yeah. Corbyn also failed to announce a successor until the last minute, Rebecca Long-Bailey. And it goes into the funding of Rebecca Long-Bailey's campaign in contrast with Starmer's. Yeah. But what do you think Corbyn could have done? A bit of wishful thinking, and with hindsight, I do think it could have been addressed more in the book, to be honest.
I think Corbyn, he had the control of the Labour Party. For a start off, he needed to bring in Jenny Ford to kick out Ian McNeice from the chairman of the Labour Party. He needed people. He needed to fire a lot of these staffers that were working against him.
Yeah.
He needed to be as ruthless as they were, because they had no qualms about destroying anybody's life. They had no qualms. These people do not care about anything. And Corbyn, I like Jeremy. I think one thing he should have done is use the party when MPs were being chosen to get put his stamp on candidates who could put forward good left-wing socialist views, which the majority of the party membership actually approve of. Corbyn could have done this.
We saw that with the leaking of the manifesto, which by the right, which was intended to undermine Corbyn, but actually increased his popularity back in 2015. Because the policies that he stood for, free broadband, nationalisation of the utilities, basic socialist policies to bring parts of the economy back under public control, were hugely popular with the British people, because they've seen the failures of Thatcherism.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's funny. I've heard this said, of all people, Aaron Bastani from Navarra. He made a good couple of comments saying that once you actually show the British people what Corbyn's policies are, they're saying, oh yeah, we agree with that. But they're told that Corbyn is a bad person, or he doesn't stand up for what you are. Immigration. You go to a man let's call him Fred, but you go to Fred and you say, are there too many refugees coming in? Oh yeah, there's too many refugees coming in. Oh yeah, we've got to do something about that. Then you turn around and you'll say, what about that little girl who goes to school with your daughter? I'll say, oh no, you leave Shamana alone. She's alright, you leave her alone. The difference is by what they actually are being told by a media that does not believe in them, does not fight for them. They basically are right-wingers. Most of them are Blairites. Trying to challenge that with what people actually experience in their day-to-day lives is different.
Yeah, if you look at where racism is most prevalent, it's usually in parts of the country where there's less contact with other nationalities.
Yeah.
And people just swallow, unfortunately, the lies that are constantly drip-fed to us by the press and by the mainstream media all the time. We're not overrun by immigrants. There is the resources in this country to go around. The problem is it's in the hands of a very few people at the top, and they want to keep it to themselves.
Do you know, there's a funny thing. I'll tell you about another book I've just bought. It's by a Swedish political economist, Pia Hansson. And he's done a book about modern migration theory. And he goes back to Sweden in 2015 when the Syrian civil war is happening. People are fleeing Syria, a heartache. David Cameron calls them a swarm and everything. And Sweden is told, literally, by the EU Commission, so don't have any hopes in the EU Commission for saving migrant rights. If they take too many immigrants, your whole nice Scandinavian social democracy, your health service will collapse. You won't have enough housing, and you've got to keep it to a minimum. Whereupon Sweden did exactly the opposite. Do you know what happened to the Swedish economy? It was one of the fastest growing in Europe. He actually reveals it. It was a joke to say that immigrants are a cost. They actually generate things. Our media puts forward the views that immigration costs them. I mean, just go down your hospital. How many immigrants work in a hospital? We wouldn't be surviving. I'm in the Bakers Union. If you go around a food factory, just seeing how many people actually work in a food factory that are migrants. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to buy any food.
One of the things where racism is more prevalent is places where less contact is made with other people. One of the other key conditions is trade union density, actually. Yeah. People in trade unions who fight alongside each other are less likely to have xenophobic opinions, are more likely to stand up for each other and see things more on a class basis.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, I'll go on about the Bakers Union. You could see just how our conferences are. They are very diverse. You see how our membership, our shop stewards, I have never done an empirical study, but it would be interesting to find out just how diverse the Bakers Union is. I mean, we unionised a place called Walk Foods in Nuneaton. Guess what? We turned it up. There was over 40 different languages and dialects. Yet nobody seems to have a problem working alongside each other there. One thing that worries me is that, and this is about reform, is that I hear now, and I haven't heard this for years, people like Farage and others, that David Starkey, the historian, they are saying about how Enoch Powell got it right. I mean, I'd never heard that until the last time we had to pay to go to university.
No, completely. And I think that more and more extreme right-wing views are becoming more commonplace.
Yeah.
And I think this ties back to the book again, really, because Labour aren't living up to what they should be doing. They should be calling out the right, saying it's unacceptable. But instead, you've got Starmer in front of Union Jacks all the time and just copying the playbook, really, of reform. And the book explains this as well, because they were talking about Rebecca Long-Bailey's leadership campaign and how Starmer simply echoed everything she was saying.
But he went to the left of Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Yeah.
He went to the left of Rebecca Long-Bailey, like what is called shadowing from the left.
I think it's called triangulation as well, in other words.
Yeah.
It just means copying your opponents so they don't get the advantage over you, but without any principles whatsoever.
And they knew what they were going to do. One of the things that made me laugh, you mentioned West Streeting. Yeah. When he put his candidacy up, very pro-Israelis, West Streeting, in an area which has a very large amount of community of Muslims there. So the Muslim community put somebody up here who was Liam Mohammed.
Okay.
Liam Mohammed come within like 500 votes from defeating West Streeting in a constituency that has been Labour since I can remember. It's always been Labour. And Liam Mohammed, I hope she runs again. I hope she defeats him.
There's certainly that idea now that the old two-party system, Tories and Labour, is gone virtually. The Greens have almost overtaken Labour, I think you can now say. Reform have smashed the Tory votes.
Yeah.
So that's gone to a more extreme position. And then you've got people like Restore Britain on the far right, of Reform even. And the reason that Starmer got in wasn't mass popular support.
No.
It was simply that the right vote was split 50-50. And that's changing and going further right since then. Hopefully, Reform have actually peaked and people are beginning to see through their lies, but whether that's going to be the case remains to be seen.
I hope so. I think in another terrible case that's revealed in the book, and it was the way that Fraser Shahan was treated. Fraser Shahan, academic, economist, who is an expert into developing world nations. She's a very clever woman, somebody you'd be quite proud of to have in your party. She then was around the election. She goes to Newsnight. An hour before she went to Newsnight, she received a text saying she would no longer be the candidate. She'd run previously before as a candidate. She was running in Ian Duncan Smith's and had halved his vote number. She walked in. She says, they briefed the press an hour before me. They briefed the press. She was about in tears. This woman was about in tears. She says, I don't know what I've done. Do you know what she did? Before she was in the Labour Party, she tweeted a couple of things from the Green Party.
Right.
She also spoke about, on a tweet, her own experiences in Labour about Islamophobia. She's Muslim. She can't speak about her own experiences of Islamophobia. Her last one, which I couldn't believe, she retweeted a sketch by the Jewish American comedian Jon Stewart of The Daily Show.
Oh, yeah.
She retweeted one of his sketches, which was about Israel-Palestine. Jon Stewart is a very famous Jewish American comedian. In fact, after he saw that, Jon Stewart put up a tweet saying, this is the most stupid thing Britain has done since electing Boris Johnson. I mean, that says it all. The vindictiveness of these people.
Well, what they did, instead of actually fighting the Tories, they were just trawling through people's social media accounts to find anything that could be remotely culpable whatsoever. And it was all contained within the idea of bringing the Labour Party into disrepute. But what actually brings the Labour Party into disrepute is failing to fight cuts, failing to meet people's needs and just acting like the Tories. That's actually what's bringing the Labour Party into disrepute.
Yeah. I thought Tony Blair was bad, and he was awful. But at least with Tony Blair, he would allow some debate. You had people like Jeremy Corbyn in there, Tony Benn, people like John McDonnell, Diane Abbott. These were Labour stalwarts, and they could disagree with it. Starmer, you straight out the door.
No opposition allowed anymore. And so that brings me really to my last question. Where do we go from here as the left? How do we rebuild? Clearly, we need a mass party of the left because there is not that voice within mainstream media anymore. What do you think on that?
Something has got to be done because there is no voice for anybody. And I think what I see now, and this saddens me, both been involved in activism for quite some years now. What saddens me is now I'm having people who always used to say to me, you say you're involved in that politics, they're all the same, not realising that the only way they can get their problems sorted out is through politics, is actually having somebody who's going to speak up for them. I'm quite saddened by your party. Really, I'm saddened. I don't know what's happened. I just want them, please. Zara, Jeremy, you both believe in the same things. Come together. People are desperate for leadership. Need somebody to follow. They need a voice for them. not something that's going to be, well, look at the left, they're all always arguing. The Greens have done well. I mean, I was pleased when Hannah Spencer got elected. You know, I was very impressed with what she said and how she spoke up. I've been impressed, actually, with some of the things Zach Polanski said. But I'm a socialist. I vote for socialist ideas. I vote for a workers' party.
Yeah.
That's what I believe in.
Well, I think ultimately the difference is that the mainstream parties try to change things just through the ballot box. The ballot box is important, by no means. I'm not disputing that, because it sort of frames the political debate and discussion quite a lot, and it frames the laws of which we operate. But ultimately, laws are there for class reasons to maintain the status quo, and ultimately they've got to be broken if they're against the interests of the majority of people in the country. If they're just there to uphold a system which benefits a very few at the top, while the vast majority of people are really struggling to make ends meet. And so Parliament has its limitations, I'd argue.
I would agree with you. I always go back to our history of our movement. Who spoke about the weaknesses of reformism is Rosa Luxemburg.
Yes.
Right. She spoke up. She says there's only one way. And Karl Marx said, just because you give every 3 or 4 years, you give a member of the oppressing class the choice over which members of the oppressing class are there to oppress and defeat. And we've got to have a different way. We've got to have true democracy. Ballot box is okay. It's a starting point. But we want real democracy. You cannot have a democracy when, I think, the Marxist economist, Richard D. Wolff, America's leading Marxist economist, he always calls out, we've got to have democracy in the workplace. That means democracy over the means of production. Democracy of what we make, who makes it, where everybody can have enough food.
At the moment, that may well seem quite a long way off. But if you want to see how we got into this position and want to have a look at more detail about how the Labour Party has become a shadow of its former self, Paul Holden's book is well worth having a look at. Yeah. The Fraud. It goes into a lot of detail about the personalities and the modus operandi of New Labour and how it's betrayed the workers' movement. Yeah. A lot of it is also in the Ford report. I disagree with Owen Jones' comment on the cover that it's breathtaking and astounding and revelatory. Yeah. I thought it was quite obvious, actually. Yeah. I'm a bit more in the know, perhaps, than maybe a lot of the readership it's aimed at. So, if you haven't read the Ford report, which goes into some of the horrible abuse actually dealt with the Labour right against, in particular, Diane Abbott. But I do think the crying need really is to build an alternative, because politics abhors a vacuum and we urgently need an alternative, both at the ballot box and in the workplace through our trade unions. Yeah. I couldn't agree more, Blue. I couldn't agree more. Well, thanks for having me then. It's been great having a chat, Duggy, and I'll hopefully see you again on the station soon. Thank you. Okay, thanks very much. There was a song we wrote in September 2019, just before Corbyn lost power within the Labour Party. It was intended more as a warning than anything, but sadly it's turned out to be very true. This is Oh Jeremy Corbyn, Where Did It All Go Wrong? Oh Jeremy Corbyn, where did it all go wrong? The playwrights remain with their tired refrain and their never-ending song of anti-Semitic slurs and smears, and Bieber's there with friendly ears to amplify their wrongs. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn, where did it all go wrong? Momentum was founded, supposed to be sounded, a socialist message of hope to all the workers across the land, we who can barely cope. Our wages frozen, services slashed by fall for Tory soft soap. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn, where did it all go wrong?
Deselect the right-wingers with their greedy fingers and far too many pies. They don't represent us, they won't influence us. Replace, rebuild, revivify. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn, where did it all go wrong?